Imagine this. You get a formal diplomatic briefing, but it's not about a treaty or some trade deal. It's announcing that the second coming has already happened. Well, that's exactly what a document from an organization called the Ecumenical Order of Christ claims. It was apparently sent to world leaders to present what it calls verifiable proof of Christ's return. So, in this explainer, we're going to dig in and break down the evidence they present, piece by piece.
Right off the bat, this briefing sets the stakes incredibly high. It opens by declaring that everything you're about to see isn't some matter of faith, but a verifiable fact. They're not just suggesting this, they're flat out declaring it, and that really frames their entire argument.
So what exactly is the big announcement? This isn't framed like a sermon or a religious text. It's actually structured like a formal diplomatic briefing. It's built to look like a heads up for world governments about this single event that, according to them, has already changed the course of human history.
So the big announcement, the main point is this: the return of Christ has already happened. And the document says its whole purpose is to lay out the fundamental evidences to prove this claim, which it breaks down into a few distinct categories.
Okay, so the first pillar of their evidence is prophecy. But they make a pretty interesting point here. For a Messiah to be truly global, you can't just rely on prophecies from one religion, right? So it tries to build this unified case by pulling from a bunch of different sacred texts. So they kick things off with Jewish scripture, specifically from the book of Daniel. And it highlights this really classic imagery of the Son of Man coming down from the heavens. This is a foundational prophecy for the arrival of the Messiah. Then they jump over to the Christian New Testament. Now they highlight a really specific detail here that becomes super important later. The event will be like lightning, flashing from the east and being seen in the west. You're going to want to hang on to that little geographical clue. It becomes central to their whole case. And to kind of round out this prophetic trifecta, they pull from Islamic tradition. They reference a hadith that says Isa, or Jesus, would return at a white minaret east of Damascus. By bringing this in, they've woven together Jewish, Christian, and Islamic prophecies to create this one, single, unified prediction. Okay, so with that prophetic framework laid out, the briefing shifts gears. We're moving away from ancient texts and into what they call modern, physical, verifiable proof, actual signs in the sky.
So this is the big question, isn't it? How do they say these prophecies actually physically came true? What was the thing that people could pull out their phones and record?
Okay, so they point to a very specific moment, January 28th, 2011. It points to video footage captured by multiple people over the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, showing this bright orb of light just descending. It hovers for a second and then, whoosh, shoots straight up at an insane speed. This, they say, was the moment of arrival.
And this is where the physical claims start to get, well, pretty out there. They interpret a prophecy about a son of righteousness literally. They claim a second sun, which they call Nibiru, actually entered our solar system back in 2011. And they argue that this is the real reason for climate change, not anything humans are doing.
Next up, the briefing takes another modern phenomenon and gives it a whole new spin. They argue that the armies of heaven mentioned in prophecy are what we'd call UFOs or aliens today. And they say that the huge spike in sightings since 2011, not a coincidence. Nope, it's the Messiah's backup arriving on the scene.
All right, so we've got prophecies. We've got these strange lights in the sky. But the core of the briefing is that the Spirit of Christ came back to a specific person, which, of course, leads to the big question: who?
Well, the document points to a man named Raymond Elwood Lear, who now goes by Lord Rael. And they argue that this new name is important because it fulfills a prophecy from the book of Revelation that the Christ would come back with a name that nobody knew. So when we look into his background, the document makes a point to mention his time as a high-ranking member of the Guardian Angels in Chicago. It also talks about a time when he was, in their words, falsely persecuted and imprisoned, which they connect directly to that prophecy in Matthew about visiting those in prison.
So what they do is they present this timeline of Lear's life that seems, well, carefully curated to line up with all these messianic prophecies. They highlight everything from his conception during a blood moon tetrad all the way to his birth on Pentecost. Every single event is presented as another step in a preordained plan.
And this is where all that geographical stuff we talked about earlier clicks into place. The briefing stresses that at the exact moment of the Jerusalem event, Lear was in the international zone between the US and Mexico. They claim this fulfills the prophecy. Wherever the body is, there the eagles will be gathered. And they point to the American bald eagle and the Mexican golden eagle. So in their story, the lightning from the east had found its body in the west.
All right, now for the final piece of the puzzle. And this is by far the most technical bit of evidence they present. The briefing claims that hiding beneath the surface of the Hebrew Bible, there's a secret layer of coded messages that prove Rael's identity with mathematical certainty.
Okay, so this final proof uses a method called equidistant letter sequencing, but you've probably heard of it as the Bible code. The idea is basically that the original Hebrew text of the Bible is like a giant hidden crossword puzzle. If you strip out all the spaces and arrange the letters in a grid, you can supposedly find these hidden messages by skipping a fixed number of letters, like, say, every 50th letter might spell out a new word. And the document argues this isn't just random chance, it's a divine encryption system.
So in this first example they give us, they claim to have found the name Rael running diagonally through a chunk of the biblical text. But then they point to other words that cross it, words like from Yeshua hand God and Elwood, which is Lear's middle name, as more proof that this is a deliberate, hidden message.
And they don't stop there. They show a second matrix as even more proof. And here, again, we see Rael supposedly hidden in the text, but this time it's directly crossing with Jesus, Yeshua, and the phrase Son of Mary. For them, this is like a mathematical confirmation linking Rael to the historical Jesus.
And the last code they show is meant to be the final nail in the coffin, the ultimate proof. This matrix, they claim, doesn't just have the name R-Lear, but it intersects with the exact date, January 2011. In their eyes, this code is the mathematical linchpin tying the man, the prophecy, and the exact moment in time all together.
So when you step back and look at the whole thing, the case they're making in this briefing is, well, it's a wild mosaic, isn't it? It pulls together ancient prophecies, modern UFO videos, conspiracy theories, a very specific biography, and claims of mathematical description. It's a really potent mix of ideas, and it kind of leaves us with a pretty big question. In our modern age of deep fakes and data mining and digital everything, what does verifiable proof even mean anymore?